Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have the pleasure to be here with Brigette Wijnhestede.
Perfect.
Right, perfect. Yeah. Okay, that from the name we can understand that she is from Holland, right? But you were born here in Canada, so you were raised in Canada. You spent pretty much all the life in Canada, apart of traveling, of course. So why we are here? Because we would like to talk a little bit about homeschooling. So you have 4 children.
Yes.
So what's the age of your 4 children?
Okay, so my oldest is 13, and then I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So
all right.
3 boys and 1 girl.
Okay. And so first of all, I would like to hear why homeschooling. So how did you think about homeschooling, why you got into homeschooling, and if they have been always homeschooling, or maybe somebody went to school for a period?
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. All my life, I wanted to grow up and be a teacher, and I grew up and became a teacher at a beautiful Christian school here in Hamilton. And then we started having children, and when they started to be close to the age of school age, then we were thinking about what to do, and we thought, well, we'd love for them to go to the Christian school that I taught at, but then in order to sort of make that happen, I would probably go back to work. So then my husband said to me, oh, wouldn't it be neat if we homeschooled? And I was like, I would never homeschool. That's ridiculous.
What grade, sorry, were you teaching?
So I taught grade 8.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I actually did a maternity leave, and I taught grade 1. So went from grade 8 all the way down to grade 1.
Okay.
So then, but then the idea sort of got stuck in my head. And we had another couple from our church that homeschooled, so we got together with them for coffee and just chatted about it. And the idea sort of just grew, and we prayed about it and thought about it. We thought, we'll try it for 1 year, just 1 year, and then we'll probably send my son at that time to school.
So it was 1 year with your eldest son, right?
Yeah,
okay.
That was the plan. Yeah, and that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So so we've been homeschooling. All of them have been homeschooled the entire time.
Okay. So no one ever went to school?
No.
To traditional school, at least?
No traditional school. Yeah.
And how did your husband came up with the idea of homeschooling?
I don't know if he was just sort of saying that because he was joking, but also actually my husband he's kind of an outside of the box thinker. So I think he was sort of joking about it at first, but then was thinking seriously you're a teacher, you can do this. And I thought no, I can't do this. But the more we thought about it and talked about it and prayed about it, we thought, well, let's try it. Like I said, for 1 year, and then 1 year became 2, became 3, became 8. So,
okay, interesting. And how do you relate that with your, you being a teacher, traditional in terms that you go to the mainstream school, right? You have been working in the mainstream school.
Yeah.
How do you relate that part of working with kids with you homeschooling? Because it's you staying at home and teaching your kids?
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of teaching you make with them, if you make any teaching? Because there are different, homeschooling, it's a very broad term. There are people making unschooling, there are people making, self-directed schooling. So what is your way? You have a curriculum, you follow anything, or it's just, letting them free of doing whatever they want?
Yes. I do follow a curriculum. Actually, I follow a curriculum from out east from a Christian company called Tree of Life.
Okay.
And they put together a lot of things, specifically literature, Bible, geography, history. And then from talking to different people, then I started doing math and science through different companies. So it was just kind of pieced together, but I do follow something. I do follow a schedule. When I first began, it was really, I kind of tried to set up my home like a classroom. It's what I knew. And then found out, we didn't need to do that. And actually it was okay to not set our homeschool up exactly like a traditional school.
So how does the usual day looks like in your house?
Yeah, so a usual day is the goal is to start by 9, which means we start at 9:30 every day.
Okay.
So, we're usually trying to start by 9.
That's a flexible schedule.
Yeah, it's flexible in that way. So, we're starting by 9:30, and it's every morning that we do our formalized schooling. And I try to always say that to the kids that's our formalized schooling when we're pulling out our textbooks and are working in our workbooks, because as far as I'm concerned, all of life is schooling and learning. So if we're out, our kids are part of a homeschool hockey program where I met you.
Well met.
And say then that is part of our schooling as well. You're learning hockey skills and drills, and that's just your phys ed curriculum there.
Yeah.
When they have their piano lessons, that's their music. And when we're out in nature, then we're exploring and
biology. And
yeah, exactly. So I don't want the kids to think of school as just being a confined time. It's everywhere and it's all the time.
And how did you get to this kind of concept or philosophy? Because being a traditional teacher, or at least you learn the way of being a traditional teacher, teaching in the mainstream school, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have been probably much more strict and then following the kind of schooling that you have into the school, so much more scheduled with timings, with the kids, quite frontal lessons, right? So having the kids sitting and you teaching them. So how did you make this shift? Was it something that you felt already from the very beginning that was part of you and you were constrained of not being able to express it in the school, or how did it work?
I think just simply from experiencing it. Having taught for a couple of years, I would have years where there were more challenges, and the challenges would always arise from the different needs of the students in the classroom. Yeah. The curriculum was the same. It's always just dealing with different children who have different struggles. So working with that and sort of discovering that, sometimes having a large amount of kids in a class, and any teacher can attest to this, a large amount of kids in a class, not always the ideal situation, but it's what you have to work with. Yeah. So then I was just thinking, if I can work with my kids more one-on-one, that's just an amazing thing to do. So just sort of experiencing it. And then as the kids were dealing with their own challenges, then just discovering, well, this really works really well. I had one child who had extreme difficulties with math. So we did, for the first couple of years, I think grade 1 and 2, his was almost completely orally, but it was one-on-one. So I would always make notes of how he was doing, but nothing was written down because that was way too much. He would just be in tears the entire time. So really trial and error and experience. And
how many years have you been teaching in the school?
I taught for 5 years full-time.
Okay.
And then I did a couple of years part-time. I can't remember how many. It was while my kids were, I think, up to my third child. I was still working part-time.
Okay.
And then, of course, here or there, I took over maternity leave. But I think it was when I had 3 kids and I was like, okay, now my oldest was getting old enough to be going into school. So we kept him home, started the homeschooling then. So.
And if you remember, I guess you do, how was your experience as a teacher in the school? I mean, what kind of feelings you have when you remember the classes you had to teach, etc. So that kind of connection or disconnection, according to that you can or you can't have with the kids. So how does it, stick in your mind?
Yeah, you know what? I have fond memories of teaching. I love teaching, and I love people, and so. I have very, very fond memories, and I know a lot of the I call them kids, but they're like 25, 26 years old, have their own families, so I should stop calling them kids. They're grown up, and I have very, very fond memories of them. But the things that I thought that really, for me, make me feel good about homeschooling, or sometimes the classroom management. So people say to me sometimes, do you miss teaching? I say, no, I'm still teaching, but I don't miss sometimes the classroom management, where you have 30 kids.
So you do miss or you don't miss?
I don't miss the classroom management.
Because that's the down part, right?
Yeah, that's the down part, right? Because if you have, say, a class of 30 children, and you have 5 that are extremely academic, 5 that are very, very weak, and then the rest who are sort of just mainstream, you're teaching towards typically an average. And so this just allows me to teach my children where they're at.
And you actually have so big classes here? Like 30 kids for one teacher?
Sometimes.
You do, okay.
Typically, if you have a class that big, you'll have a teacher's helper.
Assistant.
Yeah, an assistant that's coming in to assist,
Okay. Right, so everything looks like it's pretty positive anyway, your memories about the school, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the downside is the management of such a big class.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the difference in terms of time that you can dedicate? Like I see with my kids, for example, that is, the program that you would use to make from September to June, for example, back in Europe, and pretty much 7-8 hours a day in the class, you can reduce it down to 2-3 hours per day. So how is your experience with your kids? So how long do you teach them? You told me you were starting at 9, flexible 9:30.
Yeah.
So how long is the day, the academic day, let's say, with your kids?
Yeah, an academic day is typically we are done early afternoon. So today, for example, there were still a few people that were working about 1:30. My oldest was still working. Then he still has some homework, so he has some reading to do. But it usually a full morning, and it's an intense morning. I know some people think, oh well, morning that's easy, but it's intense. When you're working one-on-one with a person, I mean, they're not going to be sort of slacking off between questions. You know, I'm staring right at the person. We're getting our stuff done.
Okay.
So it's intense, but we're typically done by, I would say, 1:30. Sometimes the older kids, a little bit of homework.
Okay. So I feel like you're quite structured anyway. Like as a teacher, you're very structured also in the house. So what are the challenges with your kids? The main challenges, at least.
Yeah.
If you have any, I hope.
Yes, I do. I do.
I have to rest you 1 week and observe.
You know what? Challenges when you're homeschooling. I find for myself is we have siblings, and so some of our courses we'll do together. So I do a Bible class all together, and they're siblings, which means my son's going to look at my daughter the wrong way. She's going to get angry, and then we have pets, so the cat will come walking through, and so those kind of challenges, home challenges. I call it just the crazy challenges of homeschooling, and anybody who homeschools knows these challenges. And then also, the specific academic challenges that I have. Like I had mentioned to you, I have one child who's, has a lot of difficulties with math, and most of it comes from being, self-confident. So we're really, really trying to work on his confidence and getting the basics in there, like the drills, math drills, things like that.
What do you think is coming from that lack of self-confidence?
I'm not sure. I think it comes really actually from a lot of his personality, and it was really challenging, and he saw his older brother not really having the same challenges getting his math done a lot quicker than him.
He's the third, fourth?
So he's the second. That is having a lot of challenges. So maybe comparing himself to his brother. The beautiful thing about homeschooling is I can say, you can compare yourself to your brother, but he's 2 years ahead of you in your schooling. So don't. It doesn't make any sense. But they still do because they see who's done faster.
Sure. We always do in life.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And then my youngest son has had a lot of reading difficulties. And when I say reading difficulties, I just mean that in terms of his progression, it's a lot slower. He's in grade 2. If I were to put him on a spectrum or a reading level compared to anybody else, I would say he's early grade 1 reading level. But we've been able to take things, like I've taken things very, very slowly with him. And the moment he starts to get frustrated, I back off. Because I know that, if I push him too much in his reading, he's going to hate reading. And that's not the point. I want him to love reading. And when you love something, then you are willing to work harder at it. So if he's getting very frustrated, then I back off. And then I do the reading so that we can still experience the love of it. And then we'll work on learning how to do it a little bit more again another day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if I answered your question, but...
Well, not pretty much. You're telling me a lot, but I'm kind of, out of place a little bit here, because most of the mothers, they're very challenged from even just motivating the kids and getting them to do things.
Right.
Like for us, for instance, honestly, it's very difficult. We are kind of structures, and probably we weren't so much before, and throughout the trip also was very challenging to be structured, because you're moving around. Once it's here, once it's there. In New Zealand they were in the school for 6 weeks, and now here we're trying to at least make them work a couple of hours a day, 2.5 hours, and we gave them kind of, we found, not we gave them, but kind of structure where they have a more or less a plan what they're gonna have to work on, but we don't tell them you have to work on this and this and this. They know that there is a range of things they have to work on, like math and Italian, and maybe reading, writing, making dictations, etc. We help them out pretty much as well, but they decide what to do every day. And we have a kind of table to make it a little bit more structured, that they know also at the end of the week what they have done, and they have to write down how many minutes or hours, whatever they have done for each single thing, so that at the end of the week we can see, okay, this week you've been working good on Italian, you didn't do anything on English, for example, so try to work a little more on English next week and less on Italian. And but the motivation is the difficult part. I find all the time with ourselves that we have 13 and 10 years old.
Sure.
But pretty much on all the homeschoolers, what they say is that they can't motivate. So either they push them, better, worse, or depending on the situations, or they don't do anything. So how you do that is just because you have been very structured since the very beginning, or what do you think? What do you think?
So maybe I'm making everything look a lot more rosy than it necessarily is. Definitely there's always that challenge. The nice thing about having things written out, like you need to accomplish this, this, and this, is that my kids will know when that's done, they're done. So, which, I mean, sounds like you have as well. So that certainly helps. I have a couple of very, very active, especially my boys, and they just want to go and play floor hockey downstairs or outside. So, you know, if I say to them, you know, are you done all your schoolwork? I mean, then you can. That's pretty motivating for them, right? So there's motivation there to get done. But yeah, sometimes getting them to, you know, work at it as hard as I'd like them to. It's beautiful being able to homeschool and say you can sit on the couch and do your math, but sometimes they're lying on the couch and throwing pillows at each other instead of doing their math. So, I mean, that struggle is very real. And then, like I said, you know, we have pets, which I'm not sure where they are right now. They're usually all over. And, you know, they'll come running through and spill something or do something. And then
which doesn't happen in school.
Yeah, that doesn't tend to happen in the classroom as much. So, I mean, there's definitely those challenges as well. Yeah, like I said, I am probably painting a bit more of a rosier picture than every day.
No, but I think pretty much, you know, who more, who less, we all have pretty much the same challenges where you are homeschooling. Yeah. Because it's anyway an environment that is extremely familiar, obviously.
Yeah.
So they feel maybe more the freedom to do whatever they want in any moment. While in the school, it's even too structured, but it is structured, so they can't really have that kind of freedom.
Yes.
And then depending on the teacher, of course, what kind of approach and what kind of connection has with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're working on a curriculum, you told me, and that means textbooks, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it mainly textbooks, or you also work with devices, which is one of the other challenges that nowadays most of the parents, not only homeschoolers but parents in general, that they have with kids.
Yeah. Yep. So we a lot of it are textbooks and workbooks, and then our kids have not done any courses yet that are online, but next year, if we do homeschool for high school, there will be some courses that are online. So then we will be using some devices, and it's always trying to find that beautiful and delicate balance between, you know, allowing you to have devices and, you know, get off your devices already. So, we definitely do have that.
Are you saying they have devices, or they don't do it, they don't use them, or they don't have it all?
They don't have their own devices, which sounds fantastic, but that we have devices here in our home. So we have an iPad, we have a computer. My phone seems to have become the family phone. So we do have devices here, and then they do have times that they're allowed to go checking it. It's not any time that they would like. So we're trying to sort of establish boundaries.
Put boundaries,
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask you, what are these boundaries?
Typically every day they're allowed to have some, they call it their media time. They're allowed to have some media time every single day. And I struggled with that. There's part of me that would like to say none at all. But I mean, we have devices in our home. I am checking my phone when it rings or when I get a text. So I feel that I'd rather that they learn how to use these things with discernment and learn how to use them well. And then right now as parents, we just have to set up those boundaries because they don't seem to be able to themselves.
Well, they are very powerful means and they're very attractive. So if you leave a child with, and we see it all the day, you know, wherever you go, in bars, in restaurants, that the kids, they're just addicted and they're staying there. And if you don't tell them, stop it, they will stay just for hours. So what is your boundary? 15 minutes, 30 minutes?
Yeah, it's a little longer. It probably ends up being between 45 minutes to an hour a day. So
for each one of them?
Yeah, for each one, yeah.
And do they have the same boundary, even though they are, you know, one is 6 years old and the other are bigger, and until they're 13-year-olds?
Yes.
So it's exactly the same for
they
all
do,
of them?
and that's mostly because it's easy for me. It's it's like, okay, this is sort of the time where apparently they all just sort of shut down. That'll be a time where I'm doing something for myself then as well. So I might be doing some of my own work, or making supper, or exercising at that time. So it just becomes a time where, you know, they get to sort of do the thing that they want to do. I get to do a little bit of my own thing as well. So. And
let's maybe touch in a little bit about the collaboration among them and with you as well, about chores in the house and how helpful they are to each other. So if you can say anything about it.
So we do have, we call them their household opportunities. And I got that from my kids went to a Bible camp.
Opportunities are very positive.
It's very positive, yeah. Instead of calling it a chore, you know, this Bible camp, they always had service opportunities. So we thought, well, it's perfect. So they have their household opportunities, and every single day. And we usually do that either after breakfast or after lunch. And they help it with cleaning our house. So everybody's involved with, from laundry to cleaning bathrooms or vacuuming or mopping, things like that, dusting. And then my two oldest boys, they have a day where they're in charge of making the meal. So I
no
really
issues
like them.
there? Everyone is doing everything, no complaints?
Oh no, there's complaints, and sometimes trying to barter where his job is so much easier than mine. But
shouldn't call it opportunity.
yeah, they're probably thinking it's less of an opportunity, but I just say to them, that it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to learn, for you to contribute to our household. We're all working together in this household. It's not just me working for you. And I also think it's a life skill, and I say, all of life is learning, and this is an opportunity for you to learn how to take care of a house as well. So, and also too, it's amazing when my son does laundry, and then he gets very, very upset if people, I just did all the laundry, and look at all the laundry again, and then it's just like, yes, that's I've been saying that for years, right? Yeah,
sounds familiar.
Yeah. So
okay, with our kids has been very challenging, because I think me being out of the house for 2 years, 2016 and 17, and Karia was quite struggling with the kids, and we've been moving a lot, and even back in Europe, we've been first in Switzerland, then in Italy, and first in the school, so that's, I think, affected very much also the way we can homeschool them, because they have been April for 6 years in the school, and Dylan for 3.5, yeah. And I think being told every day from morning to evening what you have to do in school, and sitting there, I see that they really have challenges on finding what they would like to do, and finding that motivation not only on doing things but being inspired in doing things. Like, how is it for your kids? Like, do you find they are really genuinely interested in what they learn, what they have to learn because they know what is the curriculum, or and you have to push them in every single subject, or how is it? Or you find that they just go with the flow and they like it and enjoy it?
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting you saying that. I mean, I would love, if I had the courage, I would love to do just completely delight-based learning. It's just that I would be like, oh, but they're not getting their math. Like, what if they don't delight in math and they're not going to do math? You need your math. So I a little bit struggle with that, and that would be a lot more letting go. And I've seen some homeschoolers do that, and it's beautiful. I'm just too worried that they'll miss out on the key things. So I think it's funny for me. It's finding that balance. I mean, there's certain things I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't let go. You need to do your literature, mostly because I just love literature. You need to do your math because that's just stuff that you're going to need very, very much for sure in life. And then try to encourage anything that they truly delight in. So my one son, actually most of my sons are really into hockey, and he was supposed to, according to his curriculum, he was supposed to be reading a novel and then doing a book report on George Handel. So I switched it out for Wayne Gretzky because I just, and it was just,
of Wayne Gretzky.
A Wayne Gretzky biography, and he just absolutely loved it. And I just think that these are the ways that we can, make these slight changes. The beautiful thing, we can do that as homeschoolers. We can switch things out that's just geared specifically towards our child's strength.
Even in the school you could, but most of the teachers, they are not,
Yeah, maybe half the class would love, Wayne Gretzky, and the other class would, or the other half would not.
I know of some cases where everyone is working on his own project, for example, in literature. Yes. So it doesn't have to be half class this, half class that, but can even be, 25 kids, 25 different projects, but still everyone on literature. But it's very difficult to make teacher understand that, and to give teacher the confidence, because they are in a very structured system, so it's very challenging.
Yeah, I read a quote somewhere. I actually have it hanging in the other room, and it says that true education, it begins with wonder and ends with wisdom. And I just think that's what I really try hard to instill in my kids. Just be filled with wonder about this world. It's beautiful. God's created. It's fantastic, right? So, I mean, some days are so delightful and beautiful like that, and others are not. But we trudge through those days.
That's life.
Yes, that is.
But you said about, I think also, if I can, that you're saying that they're gonna need, literature, they're gonna need math, they're gonna need this and that. It's also, I think, a little bit from the perspective of a teacher like yourself, because you have to know about all these subjects, because you have to use them for life, because your living is made of teaching all these subjects. But when in reality, kids or adults, they're gonna be, focusing on 2, 3, 4 subjects maybe that they're gonna really need in life, while all the other subjects, or most of the other subjects that you learn in school, you basically don't need. Like, if I think back to my schooling, we had geography, history, math, science, chemistry, and so many subjects, and I was very much focused on the scientific ones, because I love them, and I love still today. A scuba diver, there is a lot of physics, etc. And I have really, it's really easy for me to remember all the laws and everything, because I just like it. But if you told me about history and geography, I would rather just, take them off the curriculum.
Sure.
And if you would ask me today, but yeah, you didn't learn, so you missed something. No, because I actually don't really need it. I need geography because I've been traveling, I love it, and I know so much, but I don't know the name of the rivers, for example, etc. So probably the perspective of a teacher like yourself, you feel like you need them to know all these subjects.
Yes.
While in life, probably they're gonna be using those 2 or 3 that you see already now in your kids. I'm sure that they are interested. Yeah, and all the rest they probably gonna be just it's kind of baggage that they have. As a culture, but they don't really need it in life. So I also understand by one side, which 6 years back probably I would tell you you're crazy not teaching these skills, but when I see also unlearners or people that they are making homeschooling and they are just leaving the kids free completely, like you were saying, I understand that, because in fact they are just letting complete freedom to the kids to focus on what they really love.
Yes.
And our challenge is for us to see that they maybe love only hockey and to let them just do that. And like, oh my God, you're gonna he's not going to learn this and this and this and this. Yeah, but maybe he doesn't need.
Yes.
So it's very challenging for parents.
It is.
I think it's very much fear-based. It's always fear back there, because what they're gonna be doing in life if they don't have all these skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, right? Because very much I think fear-based. And I think that for me, I like them to have sort of a foundation, just a little bit, so that they can sort of see where their interests are. Maybe they don't know that they're interested in this until they've learned a little bit about it. Sort of open that up. In terms of content, I'm not going to be concerned with getting, say in history, for example, everything covered if what's going to sacrifice is the quality of what we're learning. So, because I think that the most important thing with schooling is teaching our kids skills, actually, rather than content. Skills like learning how to read, so that when you become interested in the subject, you can learn about that subject by reading about it. Learning how to work the computer, so that if you can need the computer to access things or to run programs. How to find information. Exactly. Yeah. So I have really recognized that, and I'm willing to make any kind of tweaks in our curriculum that I need to ensure that the skill is being taught. And if the content is overwhelming everybody, then we just back way off on the content.
And you are very lucky here in Canada because you have the freedom to do that.
Yes.
So that's also a huge advantage here, which you don't have in many other countries. So you are fortunate in that way. But what about you yourself? Now he's 13, right?
Yes.
The biggest one. So what is your fear in the back of your mind? Because he's gonna get very soon to the 9th grade and 10th and 11th. So he's gonna get closer to that passage where he might be willing to go to high school.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So what is the fear in the back of your mind?
Yeah, the fear in the back of my mind is, I don't know if this is just me or every homeschooler, is I fear that I am limiting my children. So that's my biggest fear.
So that homeschooling them, you are limiting them.
Yeah, limiting by my capabilities and by the skills that I understand and by the things that I introduce them to. So that's always what I'm afraid of, and I'm constantly praying about that. But in terms of high school, we're researching and looking into the possibility of homeschooling high school, but then we could go to, there's some Christian schools here in Hamilton. There's some other public schools as well. So just sort of looking into all the different options and
With your eldest son, right?
Yes, with our oldest son,
And what is his opinion so far?
He flip-flops. So some days, especially if he's been hanging out with some of his friends that go to one of the local Christian schools, like, yes, that's where I want to go.
Okay.
Because then I can hang out with my friends all day, right? And then I say, yeah, but what do you go to school for, bud? Right? Are you going to school to hang out with your friends? He's like, well, yeah. And I said, well, it's not why we'd be sending you there. We'd be sending you there for your education. Yeah. So we have to think about, what's the best education for you, and not just that, but what works the best for our family. I'm not a person that thinks that everybody should homeschool. For me, it's what has worked best for our family for this season of our life. So that's what I just say to him. What's going to work best for you, for your education, and for our family for that season of our life. And then some days he's like, oh, for sure, he just wants to homeschool. And because he's a person who almost cannot get over the fact that he is done, hours before some of his friends. So he's very academic. he's motivated. I do have to check over his work because sometimes, he'll be like, oh, you skipped a couple things here. And I make sure that I check it usually.
I think there's a tendency of pretty much every child.
Every child, right, yeah.
In school or not in school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Right. I think we covered everything at this point.
Okay.
The most important things, and I think we covered some very important, we gave important messages. And I'm glad that you had me here.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Patrick.
And I hope you enjoy, everyone, and if you want to leave any comment, please do so. Thank you.
Bye.